3 months after I buried the love of my life, my own sister stood in front of our family, pointed to her son, and declared, "He's Adam's. And now I'm taking half of your house." What she didn't know was why, in that moment of absolute betrayal, I almost laughed in her face. My name is Bridget, and at 34, I never imagined being a widow. Just 3 months prior, my world had shattered. Adam, my husband of 11 years, was gone, stolen by a sudden brain aneurysm at just 36. The days after his funeral were a blur of raw, suffocating grief. Every breath felt like a physical effort. Yet duty called. Family obligations. So, 1 week later, I dragged myself to my nephew Lucas's first birthday party, bracing for awkward condolences. What I got instead was a bomb. My younger sister, Cassandra, stood in the backyard, a practiced smile on her face. Then she dropped it. Lucas, her son, was actually Adam's. She even brandished a crumpled document, claiming it was Adam's last will, revised just before he died, leaving half of our $800,000 house to Lucas. The collective gasps were deafening, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I felt a strange, almost hysterical giggle building inside me. It was so audacious, so utterly unbelievable, that it bordered on comedic. My calm response, "Oh, I see," and my struggle to suppress that laughter must have seemed bizarre to everyone there. But the truth was, Cassandra had no idea just how impossible her lie really was. Adam and I had met 12 years ago, a beautiful, unexpected collision at a charity auction. I was volunteering, admiring a watercolor of the Boston skyline, vibrant oranges and purples bleeding into the harbor. He outbid everyone, then walked straight over, handed it to me, and said, "I noticed you looking at this all night. I think it belongs with you." That was Adam. Thoughtful, observant, generous. I fell instantly, completely. Our first date felt like coming home. He was a brilliant corporate attorney, but humble, the kind of man who knew the names of the waitstaff and asked about their lives. 8 months later, he proposed on that same harbor, the skyline mirroring the painting that brought us together. We bought our dream Victorian in Beacon Hill after our first anniversary. It was a stretch, an $800,000 leap of faith, but Adam had just made partner, and my interior design business was thriving. The house had good bones, high ceilings, and a small garden where we envisioned future children playing. But those children never came. Years of trying, of doctors' tests, procedures. 4 rounds of IVF that drained our savings and our spirits. I still remember the quiet drive home after the last failed attempt. Adam reached for my hand across the console. Neither of us spoke because we both knew, deep in our hearts, that road was closed. "We can still have a beautiful life," Adam said that night, sitting with me on our porch swing. "You and me, that is enough." And he meant it. So we rebuilt our dreams. We traveled, poured ourselves into our careers, renovated the house room by room until it was the showcase I had always imagined. He supported me when I launched my own firm. Our life was full, rich, if different from our initial plan. Cassandra, my younger sister, was always in the periphery of our happiness. 4 years my junior, she was the family's wild child, bouncing between jobs and disastrous relationships. My parents constantly worried, which often translated into excusing her behavior and bailing her out financially. We had a complicated relationship. She was beautiful, effortlessly charming, but there was always an undercurrent of competition from her side. If I achieved something, she had to one-up me. When I started dating Adam, she suddenly became obsessed with law students. When we bought our house, she complained for months, subtly pushing our parents to help her upgrade her own living situation. It was exhausting, but Adam, ever the peacemaker, always encouraged me to maintain the relationship. "She's your only sister," he'd remind me. "Family is important." 2 years before Adam died, Cassandra started dating Tyler, a bartender. Their relationship was volatile, marked by dramatic breakups and passionate reconciliations. Then, at Thanksgiving dinner the year before Adam's death, came the pregnancy announcement. It was unexpected, to say the least. While Adam and I had struggled for years, pouring our hearts and fortunes into having children. Here was Cassandra, tearfully announcing an oops pregnancy. I felt that familiar sting of jealousy, but I pushed it down. I was determined to be the best aunt possible. Lucas was born a healthy 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was at the hospital with flowers and a handmade blanket I had spent months knitting. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood, calling me in tears about colic and exhaustion. I stepped in, watching Lucas overnight sometimes so she could sleep. Adam was less involved, and I rationalized it, thinking it was too painful a reminder of our own infertility. He was always kind when Lucas visited, but maintained a distance I never questioned. Not then. Then came that terrible Tuesday. Adam complained of a headache before work. I suggested he stay home, but he had an important client meeting. Just a migraine, he insisted, kissing me goodbye. I'll call you after the meeting. That call never came. Instead, one from the hospital. By the time I arrived, he was gone. A brain aneurysm. Nothing could have been done. The next days were a nightmare of arrangements and grief. Cassandra was strangely absent, sending texts claiming Lucas was sick or she couldn't find a babysitter. When she did appear at the funeral, she kept to herself, leaving before the reception. I was too numb to notice. 1 week after we laid Adam to rest, Lucas's first birthday arrived. The last thing I wanted was a children's party, but my mother insisted. Adam would want you to go. He always said, family comes first. So, I found myself driving to Cassandra's small rental house, a wrapped gift on the passenger seat, dark circles under my eyes no concealer could hide. I hadn't slept since Adam died, reaching nightly for a warmth that was no longer there. I plastered on a smile and knocked. Cassandra's friend, Jenna, opened the door, her voice oddly strained. "Oh, Bridget, you made it." The house was decorated with blue balloons. I saw a group of people whispering in the kitchen, falling silent as I passed. In the backyard, my parents sat awkwardly at a picnic table. My father's face flooded with relief when he saw me. "We weren't sure you'd come." "Of course I came," I said, setting the gift down. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother said, avoiding my eyes. I mingled awkwardly, accepting condolences, deflecting questions. Everyone seemed on edge, conversations stopping when I approached. I chalked it up to people not knowing how to act around a newly minted widow. After 30 uncomfortable minutes, Cassandra emerged, Lucas on her hip. She looked giddy, energized. She barely acknowledged me, placing Lucas in his high chair. Then, she tapped a spoon against her cup. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises." Guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly found her shoes fascinating. "I've been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, placing a hand on Lucas's head, one I can no longer hide, especially after recent events. A chill ran down my spine. Something was terribly wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced, her eyes finding mine across the yard. "He is Adam's." Gasps erupted. My father stiffened. "Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago," she continued, her voice steady, rehearsed. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. We never meant to hurt anyone. My sister was claiming she'd slept with my husband, that my nephew, whom I'd lovingly cared for, was Adam's child. It was so utterly absurd, I almost laughed again. But Cassandra wasn't finished. She pulled a folded document from her purse. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held it up. He wanted his son provided for. "This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned should go to Lucas." Every eye in the yard turned to me. Pity, morbid curiosity, discomfort. My parents looked stricken. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Not happy, but the kind that comes when something is so outrageously false it's almost comical. I pressed my lips together, trying to contain the inappropriate laughter. "Oh, I see," I said, my voice calm, even. I took a sip of water, buying time to push down the urge to laugh in her face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered. She clearly hadn't expected this reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document. A typed page with what looked like Adam's signature. I scanned it quickly, noting the inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was all wrong. The signature, while similar, was clearly forged. The connecting stroke between the A and D was off. The final flourish too pronounced. I carefully folded the paper and handed it back. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I replied calmly, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I said goodbye to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call. As I walked to my car, I heard the murmurs, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Once inside, safely out of view, I finally let out the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It started small, then grew until tears streamed down my face. Not tears of joy, but a strange mix of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief of my sister's audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know. Something Adam and I had never shared with anyone. Something that made her elaborate lie not just hurtful, but impossible. If you're still with me and thinking about the unbelievable twists some family stories can take, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unexpected revelations are definitely coming. The truth about Adam and Cassandra began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even conceived. We'd invited her over for dinner to celebrate her new job, her longest employment to date. Adam had made his famous lasagna. It was a pleasant evening until I excused myself to take a work call. Nearly 20 minutes later, I returned to find the atmosphere had shifted. Adam looked uncomfortable. Cassandra was sitting much closer to him, her hand on his arm, laughing at something I hadn't heard. I thought nothing of it then. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine was flowing. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Adam seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made a pass at him. Nothing dramatic, just inappropriate comments, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he rebuffed her, she laughed it off as a joke. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We decided to let it go, an isolated incident caused by wine and her competitive nature. But it wasn't isolated. Over the next few months, Cassandra found ways to touch Adam when I wasn't looking, sent texts that walked the line between friendly and flirtatious, and once showed up at his office uninvited. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained boundaries and told me immediately. After the office incident, we confronted my parents. It didn't go well. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures, that Cassandra just looked up to him as a brother. My mother even suggested, with good intentions but terrible judgment, that perhaps Adam was feeling flattered and exaggerating. That night, Adam and I made a decision. We would create distance from Cassandra without causing a family rift. We declined invitations that included her, made sure we were never alone with her, and Adam blocked her number after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally seeing a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but there was a complication. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same surgery due to the extensive nature of the varicocele and potential for recurrence. It was a difficult decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this medical information private. Even our parents didn't know. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we had learned to protect our privacy. The only people who knew were Adam, myself, and Adam's doctors. After the surgery, as Adam was recovering, he made a prediction that seemed paranoid at the time. "Cassandra isn't done," he said, sitting in our garden with an ice pack discreetly positioned. "I have a feeling she might try something more drastic one day." I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The next week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I went with him, listening as Adam detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James recommended documenting everything: the unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even text messages and emails from Cassandra. You never know what might become relevant, James advised. Better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later. We followed his advice, creating a file of everything. Adam also updated his will properly through official channels, making sure everything would come to me. James kept copies, and we placed the originals in a safety deposit box at our bank. Just in case, Adam had said, though I plan to be around to deal with any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who knew Adam and me, expressed condolences as he led me to the vault. I sat alone in the small viewing room and opened the box Adam and I had filled with what he jokingly called our disaster preparation kit. Inside was exactly what I needed: Adam's legitimate will, notarized and properly executed, leaving everything to me. Medical records detailing his vasectomy 2 years before Lucas's conception, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. A journal Adam had kept documenting every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, including dates, times, and exact quotes. Printed copies of text messages she had sent him. A letter from our attorney confirming he had witnessed Adam's legitimate will and was available to verify its authenticity. And at the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope with my name written in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. "My dearest Bridget," it began, "if you are reading this, something has happened to me, and you have needed to access these documents. I hope it is many years from now, when we are old and gray and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But if not, if the worst has happened and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I tried to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love. But you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam." Tears streamed down my face as I read his words, feeling his love and protection reaching out to me even after death. My practical, thoughtful husband had anticipated this. Not the specific scenario, perhaps, but the possibility that Cassandra might try to use his death to her advantage. I carefully returned everything to the box except what I needed: copies of the medical records, the legitimate will, and selected journal entries. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. James Wilson's law office was a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of place that exuded old money and discretion. The receptionist recognized me immediately, her expression softening with sympathy. James, in his 60s, had been Adam's mentor. He stood when I entered, coming around his desk to embrace me briefly. "Bridget," he said, "I was devastated to hear about Adam. He was one of the good ones." I agreed, my voice catching. "And it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister." I explained what had happened, showing him the forged will. James examined it, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This is an amateurish forgery," he said. "The language is all wrong, and the signature, while similar, would never stand up to expert analysis. But the fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling." I then showed him the documents from the safety deposit box, the medical records confirming Adam's vasectomy, the legitimate will, and Adam's journal documenting Cassandra's behavior. Adam was nothing if not thorough, James said, reviewing the materials. These medical records alone disprove her claim. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It's biologically impossible for Adam to be the father. "What should I do?" I asked, a mix of anger and exhaustion washing over me. I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I can't let her take half of our home based on a lie. James leaned back. "First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator. There's likely a motivation beyond simple cruelty here. People rarely attempt fraud of this nature without financial pressure." He recommended Frank Delaney, a former police detective. Frank, a stocky man with a Boston accent, arrived an hour later. He took detailed notes as I explained everything, asking pointed questions about Cassandra's relationships, history, employment, and financial status. I realized how little I truly knew about her current circumstances. "I'll need a few days," Frank said. "My preliminary focus will be on her financial situation and relationship with the child's actual father." I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender. He wasn't at the party yesterday, which I thought was strange for the father of the birthday boy. Frank nodded, making another note. "That's a good starting point. I'll be in touch soon." 3 days later, Frank called, requesting a meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing documents spread across the conference table. "Mrs. Preston," Frank began, "I've uncovered some concerning information about your sister's situation. Cassandra, it turned out, was in dire financial straits. Over $75,000 in debt across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who had needed surgery for a heart defect shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal. She's also facing eviction," Frank said, sliding a document across the table. "She has until the end of the month to pay 4 months of back rent or vacate." As for Tyler, he had apparently abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, moving to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He was paying minimal child support, barely $200 a month, and irregularly at that. "I also found these," Frank said, producing printouts of text messages. "She's been telling friends about her plans to claim part of your house for weeks." These were messages between her and Jenna, the friend who had opened the door at the party. The messages were damning. "Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone." I felt physically ill reading the calculated coldness of her words. This wasn't just opportunism. It was premeditated fraud designed to capitalize on my grief. "There's more," Frank said gently. "I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the actual father. He has a history of domestic violence charges from a previous relationship and currently has a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He's not someone you'd want around your nephew." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage to solve her financial problems. And her choice in partners had put Lucas in a potentially dangerous situation. "What do I do with all this?" I asked, looking between James and Frank. "I can't just expose all of this publicly. Lucas is innocent in all of this. He's still my nephew." James removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You have several options, Bridget. We could file charges against Cassandra for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties for her, possibly even jail time. Or," he continued, seeing my distress, "we could handle this privately, confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child." I left the meeting with a heavy heart and a folder full of evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chun, and scheduled an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I unloaded the entire situation. "I'm so angry I can barely see straight," I admitted. "But Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister." Dr. Chin listened attentively. "It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has existed since childhood," she observed. "The current situation is an escalation, not an anomaly." "What would you do?" I asked desperately. "I can't tell you what decision to make," she replied. "But I will say that compassion doesn't mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences." After much reflection, I decided on a course of action. I would confront Cassandra privately with all the evidence, offering her a choice: face potential legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas while requiring accountability from her. With renewed determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. "We need to talk about the will," I said when she answered. "Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon?" "Oh, Bridget, I knew you'd come around," she replied, sounding smugly satisfied. I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing, arranging documents, and setting up recording devices on James's advice. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, he had warned me. So, I couldn't record her secretly, but I could ask for her permission. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Cassandra stood on the porch, looking polished in a new outfit, her confidence radiating. "Come in," I said, leading her to the living room where I had set up 2 chairs facing each other, a coffee table between them with a recorder, water glasses, and a folder of documents. "I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation," I said, my voice even. "It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing." Cassandra hesitated only briefly. "Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, though I think this can be pretty straightforward. The will is clear." I turned on the recorder, stating the date and time and confirming her consent. Then I sat back, studying my sister's face. "Before we discuss the will," I began, "I'd like to understand exactly what you're claiming happened between you and Adam." Cassandra launched into her well-rehearsed story. A supposed affair 2 years ago, meetings at a downtown hotel, Adam confessing unhappiness in our marriage. Lucas conceived during these encounters. "He always meant to tell you," she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. "But then Lucas was born with a heart condition, and he didn't want to add stress. He promised he'd provide for his son." I listened without interrupting, noting the inconsistencies, the details that contradicted what I knew about Adam's schedule. When she finished, I began asking questions. "Which hotel did you meet at?" "The Mandarin Oriental," she replied quickly. "In what room? Do you remember?" She faltered slightly. "It was on a high floor. I don't recall the exact number." "What days of the week did you usually meet?" "Tuesdays? Sometimes Thursdays, when he told you he was working late." I continued with increasingly specific questions. "What did Adam typically order from room service? What side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after?" Details that only someone truly intimate with Adam would know. Cassandra grew increasingly flustered, her answers becoming vague or contradictory. "Why does any of this matter?" she finally snapped. "The point is that Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him." "Actually," I said calmly, opening my folder, "both of those claims are demonstrably false." I placed the medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following surgery for a varicocele. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the records with trembling hands, scanning the clinical language and dates. "These could be faked," she said weakly. "They're not," I replied, "and Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary. But that's just the beginning." Next, I produced a legitimate will, notarized and properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, prepared by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me, with no mention of Lucas. Cassandra's confidence visibly crumbled, but she attempted to rally. "He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent." "The will you have," I said evenly, "is a forgery. A poor one, I might add. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. Creating a fraudulent will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison." I continued methodically, presenting the evidence. Adam's journal documenting her inappropriate advances, the text messages between her and Jenna discussing the plan, and finally, Frank's report detailing her financial troubles, eviction notice, and Tyler's abandonment. "We know everything, Cassandra," I said as she sat in stunned silence. "The question now is what happens next." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears I'd seen her use to manipulate our parents, but deep, body-racking sobs. I didn't know what else to do. She finally choked out between gasps. "I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be out on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house." So you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I asked, my voice hardening. To tell everyone he cheated on me. To forge legal documents? I was desperate, she shouted, her sadness turning to anger. You have everything. This big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation. Her outburst hung in the air. The raw honesty of it, stripped of manipulation and lies, reached something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. Lucas is Tyler's son, isn't he? I asked more gently. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, Adam never touched me. Not like that. I did try with him years ago. He always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. And the will. My friend Dave helped me create it. He does graphic design and thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you'd actually look into it so thoroughly. I turned off the recorder and sat back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched nervously, clearly expecting the worst. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. I know, but that would hurt Lucas, I continued. And despite everything, he is my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair, that Lucas is not Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You will apologize publicly to me and to Adam's memory. And then, she asked, her voice small, we'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I will help you and Lucas. Not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs, and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that after what I did? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. There will be conditions, I continued. You will enter therapy and financial counseling. You will maintain steady employment, and you will allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he is being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I don't deserve your help, she finally said. No, I agreed, you don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care, and I deserve to have my husband's memory untarnished. This solution gives us both what we need. After further discussion of the details, Cassandra agreed to my terms. We would meet with James the next day to formalize the agreement, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. As I showed her out, she paused at the door. I really am sorry, Bridget. I've been jealous of you my whole life. Everything always seemed to come so easily to you. Nothing about my life has been easy, I replied. You just never bothered to look past the surface. Maybe it's time you started. The family dinner I arranged for Saturday evening was tense from the start. My parents arrived early, my mother bringing her signature lasagna as a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she said, but Cassandra has been calling us in tears, saying you're forcing her to come to some sort of family meeting. Just wait until everyone is here, I replied. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7, we were all seated around my dining room table. My parents, Cassandra, without Lucas, who was with a babysitter, and me. James had advised me to record this conversation as well, and a small recorder sat in the center of the table. Thank you all for coming, I began after explaining the recording. I have asked Cassandra to share some important information with you. Cassandra looked pale and uncomfortable, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. She stared down at her plate as she spoke. I lied about Lucas being Adam's son, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party. My parents stared in shock. But why would you do such a thing? My father demanded. Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister? To Adam's reputation? Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation, her voice gaining strength as she detailed the mounting debts, Tyler's abandonment, and the eviction notice. As she spoke, I saw my mother's expression shift from shock to sympathy. "Oh, honey," she said when Cassandra finished. "Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies. Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. "Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house." "Of course we couldn't give you that kind of money," my father said. "But we could have helped with the rent, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to try to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband." "I know it was wrong," Cassandra admitted. "Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted to." My mother turned to me in alarm. "You wouldn't do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget?" I felt a flash of frustration at her immediate defense of Cassandra. "Even now, I said firmly. What she did was not just immoral, but illegal. Forgery and fraud are felonies. But she's family," my mother insisted. "And she has Lucas to think about." "I am family too," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "Your daughter, too, the one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity. Where was your concern for me in all this?" My father looked uncomfortable. "Of course, we care about you, Bridget, but Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance." "And whose fault is that?" I asked. "You've been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you'd let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior." My mother gasped. "That's hardly fair, Bridget." "No, Mom, you haven't." Cassandra surprisingly shook her head. "Bridget is right. You always made excuses for me. Always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences." My parents looked stunned at this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility rather than deflecting blame. "So what happens now?" my father asked, looking between us. "Is Cassandra going to jail?" "No," I said. "I have decided not to press charges under certain conditions." I outlined the agreement, the trust fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, the stable employment condition. "That's very generous," my father said, looking relieved, "especially after what she did." "It's more than generous," Cassandra agreed quietly. "It's more than I deserve," while my mother said, brightening, "This is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized, Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us." "It's not that simple, Mom," I said firmly. "Trust has been broken here. The healing will take time, if it happens at all, and there need to be boundaries going forward." "What kind of boundaries?" she asked, looking worried. "For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet with appropriate support that doesn't perpetuate dependency." My father nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable, and I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I am involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him. But Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time." My mother looked distressed. "But we're family. We need to stick together, especially now." "Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse, Mom," I said gently. "What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family." The remainder of the dinner was subdued, my parents processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we had. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "I really am sorry," she said again. "Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything, for the years of competition and jealousy, for not being the sister you deserved." "I know," I replied, "and I hope the therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I'm willing to see where this new path takes us. For Lucas's sake, and maybe someday for hours too. The drive home with my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same. But perhaps in time, it could be something healthier, built on honesty rather than illusion. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, watching the spring bulbs push through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted the previous fall were blooming, a riot of yellow against the newly green lawn. I felt a bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he had put them in the ground with hopes of seeing them bloom. So much had changed. The trust fund for Lucas was established, already helping with his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while requiring monitoring, was responding well to treatment, and he was growing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by truly embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize patterns of behavior stemming from childhood. The constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had characterized many of her decisions. She had found steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice, a job that provided stability and benefits. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him for outings to the park or the children's museum. Cassandra and I didn't pretend to be close, but we had found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. My parents had struggled initially with the new boundaries I had established. My mother especially found it difficult to accept that her daughters wouldn't have the close relationship she had always envisioned. But over time, they too had adjusted, learning to support Cassandra without enabling her dependency. As for me, the grief support group I had joined shortly after Adam's death had become a lifeline. 12 strangers bound together by loss had become friends, understanding each other in ways that even well-meaning family and friends could not. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief, celebrating small victories, and supporting each other through the inevitable setbacks. 3 months after the confrontation with Cassandra, I had established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose to see Adam's legacy continuing in the careers of young, idealistic lawyers who might otherwise never have had the opportunity to enter the profession. Old friends had stepped up in ways I could never have anticipated. Adam's law partners checked in regularly, inviting me to dinners and events, making sure I wasn't isolated in my grief. My college roommate, Sarah, flew in from Chicago monthly just to spend weekends with me, sometimes doing nothing more than watching movies and ordering takeout. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation 6 months after Adam died. He was a professor of ethics at Boston University, thoughtful and kind, with a quiet sense of humor that reminded me of Adam in some ways. We started as friends, sharing coffee after foundation meetings, then gradually transitioned to occasional dinners. It was different than what I had with Adam, as it should be. Michael understood that Adam would always be part of my life, that loving again didn't mean replacing what came before. We were taking things slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries had validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me, even in his absence. I had learned difficult lessons through this ordeal, that family relationships need clear boundaries to remain healthy, that documentation is not just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity, that forgiveness does not have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue, that sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the ones we need protection from. But I had also learned about my own strength. I had faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated the legal complexities, and made difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while processing the devastating loss of my husband. I had found a way to honor Adam's memory while beginning to build a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. I thought about how grief is like that too. Not a straight line, but a series of seasons, each bringing its own challenges and unexpected beauties. I was not the same person I had been before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic in how I approach relationships and boundaries. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had. I said softly to the garden Adam had loved. You couldn't have known what would happen after you were gone, but somehow you prepare me to face it. And in that way, your love protects me still. As I turned to go back inside, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Not because the grief was gone, it never would be completely, but because I had found a way to carry it alongside hope for the future. Adam had given me that gift, teaching me that love endures even when the person is gone, that preparation and honesty are acts of profound caring. If there's one thing I would share with anyone facing betrayal within their family, it is this: protect yourself with both documentation and boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, and the ones who don't were never safe for you to begin with. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members, even when it broke your heart to do so? Tell me what you think.